For all of you who saw my last video, is it possible for somebody to have a mental illness and have poor mental health? And the answer is yes. Let's take an example of somebody who doesn't have a mental illness but is experiencing poor mental health and the mental stress that's associated with that poor mental health. What causes that mental stress and that poor mental health is, most people, if you go on a weekly, drinking or drug binge, yeah, that'll probably affect your mental health. Or, if you've got, something with, you lose your job or there's a big change in your life, somebody passes away, or, you've got, you're eating a poor diet or high in sugar or lack of sleep. There's so many things that can cause, a trigger of, you know, poor mental health and associated mental stress. Now, what happens when a person's experiencing that? Well, often you see people, they begin to isolate themselves. They don't talk to many people. They stay at home. They, chores start to rack up. They start eating more bad food. It starts to snowball out of control, and you know things just get messier and messier around the house, and they have no motivation to do anything or to clean or to, life just becomes such a challenge to carry on with the demands of life. And, anxiety starts to set in, their thought patterns start to, become more and more negative, and, they just feel trapped in their own brain. And, depression maybe sets in. They don't go out of their house for weeks, and, you know, things get worse and worse. Their friendships start to, maybe get rocky or whatever. People are really, something's up with this guy, right? So it's, that's what people, I believe that's the mental stress that's doing that, caused by, having poor mental health. So how is that different than somebody who is experiencing, mental illness? And, mental illness is different, right? Because mental illness is to deal with it's your it's a mechanism in your brain that's biological and more biological in nature. So there's not necessarily, you're experiencing all those things, that mental stress of what people deal with poor mental health, but there's not a really often a an environmental trigger. Like, they may not have, gone on a weekly, a binge of alcohol for a week, or they didn't, something didn't happen in their life with their friend, if like a friendship went wrong or somebody didn't pass away or so. They didn't have some like known trigger, but they're still dealing with this like mental stress. And it's like, it just doesn't seem to like dissipate or go away. So whatever you do, you get relief, but you don't, it's still there. It's still, lingering, right? And so that's very different than somebody who is experiencing, mental stress with poor mental health, and they're just kind of, they work themselves out of it, right? You're able to kind of just work yourself out of it. So why is mental health so much, or mental illness so different? And why doesn't just working yourself out of it, why can't you just work yourself out of it? Well, if anyone who's seen that process in the brain where, sorry, not a process in the brain, but the mechanism that triangles like thoughts, emotions, behavior, and how those are interconnected. Like, your thoughts affect your emotions affect your behavior, and behavior affect your thoughts, and vice versa, and whatever. So that mechanism, which is all processes in the brain, like your thoughts is a process in your brain, that is that mechanism is affected with people with mental illness. And more so than the average person like that. And that's where you see a lot of people with like they're like people with mental illness. Their thoughts, they're always dealing with kind of like bizarre thoughts or abnormal thoughts, or their negative thought patterns, or they got anxiety all the time and they can't seem to shake it. um, or their emotions are kind of up and down. You go through euphoria, or people with, you see that with people with like with bipolar and stuff like that. Or you see like depression lasts for like a year or longer, and they just don't get out of their house for like a year. It's crazy. And or you've got like irritability that they experience, or you know their moods kind of all over the place, regardless of any sort of environmental experience. They just seem to be dealing with it. Or their behavior just is bizarre and unpredictable. Like, that's another common trait with people with mental illness, right? So I believe that the how we interact with our environment, that mechanism of how we interact with the environment, and that impact on the thought, emotion, and behavior is what mental illness, that process is disrupted with mental illness. And that mechanism totally exists, the one with interacting within your environment and the thought, emotion, and behavior, and how those are connected. Let me explain that. So if I take somebody like myself, to say I'm just going and hanging out with a group of people, and it's a bad experience for me. I'm getting bullied. Somebody's calling me a piece of poop. I might think, oh, you know what? Maybe I am a piece of poop, and that's gonna, maybe that's gonna affect my self worth. And I think, oh, you know what? I'm not cool enough to hang out with these guys, or I'm a loser, right? And that's a negative thought that's gonna affect my emotion. I'm gonna feel sad, and I maybe cry. I don't know. So that's gonna affect my behavior. Or I get very angry, and no, I'm not. I'm a cool dude, and I just get angry and I hit the guy. Well, that environmental how I'm interacting within my environment, which is that social environment that I'm in, that's going to impact my thought, and it's going to impact my emotions and behavior. So that mechanism totally exists. And I think that the people with mental illness, that mechanism is somehow, that process makes you more susceptible to your environment and how you interact within your environment and on those processes of the brain, the thoughts, emotions, behavior. That's what I believe. So let's take somebody who has a mental illness, but they're doing all those things like associated with the poor mental health, like eating poorly. They have an environmental trigger that happens. They've got, say somebody passed away in their family, or they go on a weekly binge to the whatever, drink for a week. Well, now they're going to have poor mental health and a mental illness that they're dealing with as well. So, which means they're going to have extreme levels of mental stress, extreme, that most people don't experience. And that is why you're seeing the mental health crisis and the opioid overdose and the amount of suicides out there, because the level of mental stress that people are dealing with is just so extreme that they can't manage anymore. And that is very tragic to see. So, yeah, I just wanted to bring more awareness about mental illness. We're going to continue to smash down these stigmas associated with mental health and mental illness. So stay tuned. We got a lot more coming. Thank you.